Quick apology before I begin. The colour temperature in the forthcoming video keeps changing. I hope you can just bear with it. It's only about 5 minutes long, so I'll have it fixed for the next video, promise. Cheers. Okay, welcome to the video. So today I just want to do one of my, what I call my long shorts, where I look at a few things in the media. There are three things. I was going to talk about two, but then just as I was about to do this, a third thing just popped up on my feed that connects the two of the two outer ones really nicely. So three issues, and they all relate to recent videos that I've made. So the first one relates to a claim that I made in a previous video, that our political elites are focused on what I there called the reactionary project, that is military build-up and war, rather than helping their own people. And I talked about the UK in that regard in the previous video, in particular the advice that the incoming Prime Minister Burnham received from a columnist writing for the newspaper The Independent about how to cut welfare and raise taxes in order to fund that project. Okay, well, let's just go back in time a bit. On the 11th of July this year, this man resigned from Starmer's cabinet. This is John Healey, who was then, this is in the UK of course, he was then Minister of Defence. And he resigned accusing Starmer of not doing enough for the military or for the cause in Ukraine. Now obviously there's been some deal here, because yesterday Healey was named as Chancellor of the Exchequer in Burnham's new cabinet. That is, for those who are not familiar with the British system, basically as the Minister of Finance. Now, people were expecting somebody else, but it was a surprise to most people, perhaps not such a surprise to me, that Healey was named. Clearly, the aim here is to ensure that the money, we're talking about the taxpayer money, the money of the UK taxpayers, goes where it's meant to go, that is, where it's meant to go, and not where the people in the UK want it to go. So if you think that the Burnham government might change things or might succeed where Starmer failed, my advice would be to think again. The second thing I want to talk about is this headline in the BBC. Zelensky sacks Ukraine's top army commander after days of protest. Okay, now it goes on to say, the article says, this comes just days after the removal of Popular Defence Minister Mikhailo Fedorov, a move that triggered street protests across the country. Initial rumours that the end of Fedorov's tenure was related to a conflict between him and Syrskyi was soon confirmed. Fedorov has been widely praised for energising the ministry and transforming the armed forces, as well as leading a drive against corruption. Syrskyi is seen by many in Ukraine as a Soviet school commander reluctant to implement radical changes in the army. Well, what's going on here? Well, the key thing is that Zelensky has sacked both of those people, both Fedorov and Syrskyi, in recent days. Why? Well, the narrative, according to the BBC headline there, was that Syrskyi had it in for Fedorov and so got rid of him, and then Zelensky had to sack Syrskyi because of the public outcry at the sacking of Fedorov. That's all complete bollocks. Now, I'm not going to go into this in huge detail as to exactly what went on with the sacking of Fedorov. I'll link here to a video by the Duran if you're interested in following that. I just want to focus on two aspects of this issue. One is, why was Syrskyi sacked? Well, the story, right, is he's sacked because he pushed Fedorov out. But the real story is that Syrskyi was a threat to Zelensky. People have been talking about Syrskyi as a possible replacement for Zelensky for years now. So one of the big problems with Syrskyi was that he was a threat to Zelensky, and Zelensky's been looking for an excuse to get rid of Syrskyi for ages, and he's taken his opportunity. I mean, the idea that this is what the people in the streets of Kiev and other places were wanting is ridiculous. But that's the story. That's the first problem with Syrskyi, is that he was too popular. He was a threat to Zelensky. The second problem with Syrskyi is that he was too honest. he's been saying for many months that the Ukrainian armed forces are in serious danger of collapse. I mean, if you want to know the truth about what's going on the ground, on the battlefield in Ukraine, you don't get the absolute truth from Sersky, but Sersky is prepared to be more honest with people than Zelensky or Starmer or Macron or Merz or von der Leyen or anybody in the West, and they don't want him. They don't want someone being honest. And it's interesting because this is a pattern that's repeating itself, because it's also the same in Israel, where maybe it was 3 months ago now, the head of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, came out and said that Israel would need 6 IDFs, 6 defense forces to maintain its current load, and is in serious danger of collapse. And it's just interesting to note how that stuff seldom makes its way into the Western media, at least into the Western mainstream media. I mean, here we have the leader of the Ukrainian armed forces and the leader of the Israeli defense forces saying this, and yet our media is so reluctant to report that. And one of the curious things in relation to Israel is that the way I found out that the leader of the Israeli Defense Force had said that, and I think the way other people found out, is just by reading Israeli newspapers. The Israeli newspapers are much more honest about what's going on in Israel than Western newspapers. It's a very curious thing. And what can I say? It demonstrates the level of propaganda that exists in Western media at the moment. Shocking and frightening. Anyway, so that's one thing I wanted to focus on, why Sersky has actually been given the boot, right? I mean, I think the main thing is he's too honest. The second thing I want to focus on is, why isn't Fedorov being reinstated then, right? I mean, if he's so valuable and he's only been kicked out because of the big bad Sersky, why isn't Zelensky now reinstating him? And I mean, the truth is that Zelensky doesn't want to reinstate him. It was Zelensky who got rid of him in the first place, because again, Fedorov was becoming too popular and then becoming a threat to Zelensky. But what's supposed to be so special about Fedorov anyway? And the answer is that Fedorov is said to have organized the Ukrainian drone program. This is amongst other things. This was the key thing. The key contribution that Fedorov is said to have made is that he's organized the Ukrainian drone program, which, according to the Western media, has been so incredibly successful. So over recent months, Fedorov has been presented in the Western media as a genius, right? That through the establishment of the drone program has turned the war in Ukraine's favour. And that leads nicely on to the third topic that I want to talk about today. Check out this headline from the Financial Times. Ukraine to buy Chinese drone parts with EU funds. Now, what this report makes clear, now some of you would know this already, those who watch the Duran, for example, would know this already because they talked about this about 3 weeks ago, but it's now been confirmed by the Financial Times that in effect there is no Ukrainian drone program. So, the Western media has been sending up Fedorov as this great genius who established the Ukrainian drone program, but there is no such thing as this report in the Financial Times is now making clear. In fact, the parts for the drones are all made, or almost all of them, are made in China. And they are exported from China in particular to Malaysia, and then on to Europe, and mainly there Germany, where they are assembled before shipping to Ukraine for a little final installment, sort of last coat of paint, or stick the label on the side, or whatever, to make them look as if that they were, they stick the sticker on saying made in Ukraine, right, when it gets over the border. So so why isn't Fedorov being reinstated? Well, there's no need to reinstate him because there's no drone program that he is the head of, right? So okay, now that's very interesting again, because it reveals the level of propaganda that exists in the Western media. But there's another issue that I want to focus on a different angle on this. I previously made a video about the way that China seems to be treating her allies, and I suggested that if China gets the reputation that it treats its allies badly, that's going to haunt it in the long run. And there I was talking about Iran and the pressure that Iran has come under from the Chinese to keep open the Strait of Hormuz. So even after the United States started violating the Memorandum of Understanding, the Chinese were pressuring the Iranians to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Now, my argument there in that video was that if you undermine your allies, well, eventually you won't have any. And so I questioned whether that was really in the interest of the Chinese to behave that way. Now, I might just note in passing here that the United States has reimposed its blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. And on the face of it, that's an odd thing. It was an odd thing the first time, right? But it's an odd thing the second time because it's in the interest of the United States to get as much oil out onto the market as possible, because after all, it's the inability of oil to get out on the market that the Iranians are using as leverage against the United States. So on the face of it, it seems counterintuitive to impose a blockade because you're increasing the leverage that Iran has over you. So why is the US doing this? Well, the US is doing this because, again, they're trying to get the Chinese to put pressure on Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that does demonstrate just how desperate the United States is. It seems their only real strategy, right, apart from just making all these threats, their only real strategy is to try and get the Chinese to help them. And it goes to show how far the power of the United States has fallen, right, in recent decades. Well, really, in the space of how far it's visibly fallen in the space of a few months. Now, in the comments to that video, it was argued that China and Iran aren't really allies. They're just kind of friendly rather than friends. And I can see the point of that. But China and Russia, they are allies. I mean, in fact, it's often talked about they have an alliance without limitations. Right now, what you need to understand here, however, is that what we're seeing when we see drone strikes inside Russia that are coming from Ukraine, those drones are basically Chinese drones, right? They are basically made in China. Sure, they're assembled in Germany and a little bit in Ukraine, but they are basically Chinese drones. And the Russians have been raising this with the Chinese for over a year, but the Chinese refuse to do anything about it. Now, my question then is this what it means to be an ally of China? Right, the Chinese are quite happy to sell, in effect, to sell drones to the enemies of their allies that the enemies are using against their allies. Is that what it means to be an ally of China? Now, right now, of course, it's true that Russia and Iran need China more than China needs them. But that's a fine line. In fact, China needs them as well. It needs them for oil, for one thing, needs them for gas. Right? China actually does need Iran and Russia. And it also won't always be true that Iran and Russia need China more than the other way around. There'll come a time when China needs the help of its allies. And I just wonder whether China is setting itself up for a fall here. It looks to me like the Chinese are being too clever, too strategic. Right? They've read The Art of War a few too many times and they think this is a winning strategy. But they're not taking into account the human side of this. The fact is that if you let me down when I need you, don't count on me to come to your aid when you need me. You see, it's right now, it's in the Chinese interest that both wars continue, both the Ukraine war and the war in Iran continue. It is in their interest because those wars tie down and deplete the United States. So just looking at it in that sort of big chessboard way, this all looks good to them. Those wars look good to the Chinese, but the rest of the world, I think, not just the Iranians and the Russians, that the rest of the world must be getting a different message. And that message is that being a friend of China is not worth what it might be worth. Is that what an alliance with no limitations really looks like? Anyway, I'll be interested to see how this develops. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers.